Right, let's do this quickly. All right. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, guys. Thank you very much for being part of the Boost Analyst program this morning. So, without further delay, as I mentioned, guys, I really want to take the whole back thing one level deeper. No more easy stuff, right? I really want to go intense with the whole Boost Analyst program. And as a result of which, I want to make it much more case study focused and much more, people using their brains. Now, I am also, as a result of which, going to be using a lot more ChatGPT just because it's fast, right? So by the end of the session, what I really want is people to understand, the key word here is implications, right? And that is a key part of this whole kind of business planning, strategy development, operating model, is understanding what's next, right? So am I sharing my screen? I'm not, am I?
You are.
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as a result of which, I really want to make sure that we're working our brains much faster. And I promise you, in many instances, like I think I've said this before, right? When you're working in the world of decision makers, what you want to be is basically one step ahead, right? It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being one step ahead and understanding in trying to be one step ahead. It's really about understanding what's next and being able to forecast what is likely to happen as a result. So that's going to be the kind of key emphasis for today. And in many instances, what's next is quite obvious, but the thing that kind of distinguishes us versus someone who's new, like not necessarily, and when I say us, I mean like a consultant mindset versus someone who's not a consultant, is usually a case of structure. So the key thing here is it is common sense, right? Common sense is key, but what makes it kind of tangible as such, right, is the structure, right? So the tangibility of what's next equals structure, right? So hopefully, inshallah, we'll get through this, and then and at the end of it, I want you guys to tell me, does this stuff make more sense? Now, kind of for the last couple of months, I think 6 months now, we've been doing kind of case studies that are made up, Pablo Escobar, Ministry of Culture, etc. But I want to go kind of more like actual business. So business transformation is a major kind of it's a word that is used a lot, but very few people actually understand it. But basically, a business transformation could mean anything, right? And as part of it meaning absolutely anything, it could be a strategy discussion, it could be a business model discussion, it could be an operating model discussion, right? But the reality is it's probably all of them, right? If you're going to transform a business, that alignment that we always talk about between strategy, business model, operating model, that must be the case, right? So hopefully, inshallah, let's see how quickly we can get through a case. And the idea here is, again, to speed up how fast we are thinking about business challenges, right? So speed is kind of everything here, right? Obviously complexity, but I promise you it's not that complex, right? Once you get your head around some of these frameworks and you're actually stimulating your brain to use them, these frameworks are not genuinely that difficult. So let's keep it moving. And just because we have started a new cohort or a new starting point for the Boost Analyst program, I just thought, you know what, why not introduce it again? Or introduce myself again. So obviously that's me, and this is my absolutely stunning daughter, mashallah, Sophia. I've been in the game for a long time, ex-BlackRock, ex-KPMG. I was actually for a little time working with Kearney, and then I decided, you know what, I'll do my own thing. And alhamdulillah, that's where we are today. And of course, as part of building the Boost Analyst program, the idea was, let's look at global MBA programs. Let's look at what's best practice in terms of consulting, and let's kind of figure it out, what this means for most people who are not necessarily working as consultants, but what is it that you need in terms of practical skills that will allow you to work with decision makers. And this is what this is all about, right? We want to work with decision makers, and what do decision makers need in terms of people like us to, competently support them in their decision-making process. So learning objectives, guys, again, it's all about context. So we start off with business and operations. Number 2, structured problem solving. So we're going to be doing a little bit of all of this, right? So problem solving. Number 3, financials, right? So we won't be building a financial model today, but we will be thinking about the implications on financials and, of course, presentations. And of course, we won't get a chance to do any kind of presentations today. But in kind of being able to solve business problems as quickly as possible, as I said, you need to understand these 4 key things. But like I said, I'm going to try use more and more AI in our sessions because it just helps us get through that logic much quicker. And I don't know if you guys are still following me on TikTok or not, but I'm finding that even I'm making more and more videos about people being fired, consulting firms being reduced, more and more companies taking the whole consulting thing in-house and learning more about what isn't feasible anymore in 2025. So inshallah, we're going to start seeing a lot more AI being utilized in the whole kind of Boost Analyst program. But let's keep it moving, inshallah. And of course, guys, the idea is that we don't want to be average, right? We don't want to be average, right? So we don't want to get stuck below this purple line. And in order to not be average, what we need to make sure is that we upskill by learning these key, these 4 key skills. And these 4 key skills is what's going to help us stay above average, because the vast majority of people, they work hard, but they never actually learn the key skills that will allow them to work with decision makers, irrespective of where they are in their career. Now, of course, the sooner you learn this stuff, the better. But of course, there's some things that you cannot hijack, right? And what I mean by that is that even if you learn these 4 key skills here, that's great. But it does come, there is no replacement for experience, right? Experience. So even if you learn them late, you have experience. And if you learn them early, then that's great. But then you can incorporate that as well. So I hope that makes sense, right? So let's keep it moving. Now, as always, guys, no judgments here. Engagement is key. There's no such thing as a dumb question. And of course, leave the jokes to me. And to be honest, I've had so many espressos this morning because I didn't sleep till very late last night that I'm just in a super serious mood today. So hopefully no jokes from my side either. Let's just keep it focused. And yeah, I'm just thinking, let's see how it goes, how engaged people are. And then, even me, like I said, one of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make the Boost Analyst program as useful as possible, as practical as possible, right? So practical, right? So let's see how it goes, inshallah, and we keep it moving from there. So let's go back here. So if you guys have, everyone should have this document that I've just shared with you. If you have this document and you want to follow on with me, that's great. But let's go through this initial case study right now together. So, and just so you know, the impetus for doing this case is one of the bros in the group said to me, Fahad, I want to talk about IT implementation, right? Now, IT implementation is one component of business transformation, right? In order for a business to transform, there will definitely be an IT component, but I want to look at everything from a wider lens perspective, as in, starting from the point of what's the trigger? Implementing an IT system has to have some level of trigger at some particular point in time. So that's why I wanted to go all the way back to basics and say, okay, this makes sense. Let's do this. So we have a retailer that is going online. Right, so let's read about this retailer in a little bit more detail. Now, the business change or transformation, and I think that's a good way of explaining it. What is a business transformation? A business transformation is where there is some level of significant change. Now, that change could be internal, that could be external, right? That could be, as a result of regulatory change or something. But basically, a transformation is a process by which there is a big change taking place in the business. And as part of that big change taking place in the business, you need to create a transformation plan in order to ensure that the business is able to continue doing what it's doing, right? And while still making progress towards that kind of desired end state. So that is fundamentally what a business transformation. And these things usually, just so you know, take months, if not years, to take place, right? And they are usually things that are happening all the time behind the scenes. So some departments may be transforming, some departments, some teams, the entire organization, some geographies, depending on the type of business, some regions, something is always transforming within size organizations. And sometimes it's just a complete massive overhaul of the entire company. On that note, guys, can you guys tell me of any transformations that you're aware of, or any kind of businesses that you are working for that might be going through a transformation? It'll be interesting to know.
Hey, Assalamualaikum, guys. Fahim here speaking. One thing I saw, like 2 years ago, is usually like, when a firm wants to kind of reduce its operational risk and enhance their IT infrastructure. So what they will do is, instead of relying on all these manual steps when you report the information, they will try to have a specific like IT software to do like data analysis, reconciliation. For example, one thing that I have in mind is like Microsoft Power BI. So like you used to have all the like FP&As, they tend to download, extract, analysis, and there's lots of manual steps. Whereas when you kind of implement Power BI, it's like all quick wins. You have controls, data visualization tool, and everything. So they were like kind of a mission to implement this. So obviously, as you said, it takes a bit of months, but it was really nice to have it in the firm. Yeah.
Amazing. That's a great example. So rather than maybe framing it as operational risk, I think maybe the framing point for that would be, many organizations are looking at IT for insights, right? So using Power BI, as a function of capturing data, whilst you're capturing data, being able to then extract information from that data is a key thing, right? So insights and then extract kind of, I guess insights and then extracting kind of way forwards, etc. And of course, there is definitely an operational risk component there as well. But fundamentally, that is a business transformation. This, how can we better utilize technology across our business? And usually the starting point for that would be, if we think about it, right? It could be like something which is driven by the customer. It could be something that's driven by financials. It could be something that's driven by operations, could be something that's driven by regulation as well. All right. Any other trigger points for why an organization might want to start thinking about IT in more detail? So I'm specifically talking about the trigger here.
Yes, I contribute here.
Please.
Yes, usually the IT help businesses to govern their process. Like they make sure that they apply the business rules through the system, so nobody can break it.
Yeah, so it's an enabler of ensuring things are being done according to how they were designed. So it's almost removing the human error component, right? To make it more, and this is inherently, and please correct me now, guys, I'm not an IT guy. I'm a strategy guy. But again, I don't need to be an IT guy to understand the essence here, right? And this is what I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is what ERP does, right? An ERP system will fundamentally put in place certain technology processes which therefore are structured around your organization to ensure people are adhering to processes that have been designed. For example, procurement, right? Procurement is the process of buying stuff the organization needs, right? But within just what I've just said, there's huge amounts of risks. And actually, maybe what the bro said earlier is correct. It is an operational risk, procurement especially. Why? Because people can go out and buy tons of shit that the business doesn't actually need. So if it does do that, then of course it's a risk for the business. So what you do is you implement within your ERP system, your enterprise resource planning system, ERP, like SAP and Oracle, you have within it very clear guidelines and processes to ensure that no one abuses their authority when it comes to procurement. So they cannot buy things that they don't need. They cannot buy things for the wrong price. They cannot buy things without taking the respective approvals. They can't buy things which are not in budget, and so on and so forth. Does that make sense, guys? So actually, maybe is, there is some level of operational risk there, of course, right? And of course, on the back end of that, then there will be insights. What are we buying? How much are we buying it for? Collecting that data, which will then allow us to make better decisions going forward. Maybe we can renegotiate contracts and stuff like that. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes,
so these are all
exactly.
examples of business transformation, right? A business transformation plan could be like what we have in front of us, right? So we have a retailer that's going online, and you will see a lot more of this in Saudi, right? Because I remember when I first got to Saudi in 2009, right? I remember getting things delivered to your house was very difficult. We didn't have a like a proper delivery network, and it was a bit of a pain, if I'm honest, right? You'd have to get it delivered to like a distribution hub or something, and you'd have to go collect it from there. So it was a bit of a pain. And as a result, and of course, Saudi Arabia culturally, going to the mall was like a family day out. That's what you would do. So again, retail, like as an e-commerce, took time to, if you compare, in fact, let's draw this. I love drawing, right? So if you compare kind of the adoption of tech e-commerce in Saudi versus other countries, whereas, like, for example, not that this is some kind of great benchmark, but the UK was like this, right? But Saudi Arabia's adoption of e-commerce was a bit like this, and I suspect it will go higher at some point, but it was slower initially, and a lot of that was to do with the fact that Saudi's infrastructure wasn't ready, and of course, culturally, people used to enjoy going to the mall. And it's funny because the mall concept has only really started kicking off in the UK recently, right? So you see, like, if anyone's come to London, you see Westfield Mall. That's like a 10, 15-year concept. Like, it hasn't existed for a long time. Whereas in Saudi, because it's so hot, it's all mall-based. In fact, Saudi is going more towards strip malls. So when I was in the waterfront in Riyadh a couple of months ago, it's kind of becoming more, it's different anyway. And it's all cyclical, things change up and down, whatever. But as part of going online, your business, right? That's how, and if you're going from physical to online, especially in a business like retail, there are many businesses whereby initially that retail component of their business could be 20-80, right? But it could very easily become 80-20. Right. So what I mean by that is, we could initially have online could be 20% and physical in-store could be 80, but it could very quickly turn around. That's how transformative is, if that's a real word. I'm pretty sure that is. That's how transformative kind of digital, or rather online versus physical, is. Right. So if you go from having a business which is by and large in-store to then having it online, it could potentially completely change how your organization is structured and works. So let's go into this case now. So guys, again, if you want, follow the document that I've shared with you guys, take your notes, whatever, and we'll take it from there. But in essence, we have a mid-sized fashion retailer that has been 100% in store. And now they've decided to launch an e-commerce business to meet customer demands, right? And compete with online first brands. And I promise you, this is a problem that many retailers are facing. Now, this particular company was founded in 2008, right? It's in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's a mid-sized fashion retailer selling affordable fashion for young adults, 18 to 35. 50 stores, 15 in Riyadh, Jeddah, and the rest in tier 2 cities. Damn, 500 million riyals worth of sales. That's about 100 million pounds. Net profit margin, which is 8%, which is pretty solid for a retail business. A lot of employees. So the current situation is as follows: entirely brick and mortar, no online sales, huge amounts of competition coming in from Shein, Namshi, Amazon, etc. And now and this is important, right? The trigger. When does an organization start to take this seriously? It's usually a reactive decision. Unfortunately, that is the nature of management, is that there has to be some kind of trigger. Very rarely does a management team capture the impetus to do things. And even if they do, like, their ability to maneuver and actually make a change, there's usually some kind of tangible impact which they can all point to, right? And that tangible impact in many instances could be some level of revenue, right? Implication, some kind of growth, some kind of there has to be some kind of level of that trigger has to be tangible. I guess that's the point, right? So accordingly, the management have said, yep, we have no choice. We have to go online. Now, to go from here to then go online is a significant transformation, right? Huge transformation. And it's not just about implementing an IT system. It's about a complete overhaul of the entire business. So let's keep it moving. Let's keep going into the detail here. So everyone's comfortable, I think, with what we're saying. So what we have here now is revenue breakdown, men's accessories, and this is the and then we can have here, this is the revenue and the financial breakdown, revenue and costs, right? And based upon this, we have now the actual business change. So management have approved a 50 million riyal investment to, number one, build an e-commerce platform. They will have to set up a warehousing and logistics for orders, launch a digital marketing push, and of course, integrate payments and loyalty programs online and offline. And they've kind of set themselves up with a target, right? Which is 10% of sales need to come in year 1. And then year 3, they want to increase that to 25%, right? So that's the kind of impetus, and that's the kind of design that they've put in store for themselves. So based on this, guys, I just want to have a quick open discussion. What do you guys think? Is there anything in particular that stood out from the case that we've discussed so far? Any thoughts initially, guys? What are your immediate thoughts in terms of what they could do?
Okay, Fahad, if you allow me just to share my thoughts about this. So, as I see, the use case is only focusing on the transformation that will impacting the IT of the whole business. Yeah. However, usually such a business transformation will impact the processes, the culture, the people, in terms of training, and even bringing in new talents that understand the new way of working.
Absolutely. So 100%, this transformation is not an IT transformation. It may sound like an IT transformation, right? But in many instances, right, there is a balance that you're finding in transformation, and the transformation balance is between the business and the operations, right? So what we're saying here is we're not saying this is just an IT. We're just trying to build a website and sell stuff. No, this means a complete overhaul of the business's operations, because the operations, remember, initially will be 100% focused on retail outlets, right? So their IT system today would be focused on retail outlets, right? Their business, so their product, price, place, promotion, so their products may stay the same, but their pricing could be different, and also their promotion strategies could be different. And of course, just think about it for a second, right? When you buy things online, right, the process of buying things online, returning things online, looking for alternative things online, marketing online is very different to having retail outlets. So your business will also change, right? The business model. So we're talking about, you can sell different products online as well. So product, price, place, promotion. All of these elements is also changing. So this transformation, exactly as the bro mentioned, is much bigger than IT, but it can easily be misframed as an IT transformation. We're going online. But for me, this is about as big a transformation as it gets, because it touches upon the three key elements, right? Which is strategy, business model, and operating model, right? And we're going to discuss this in more detail, so let's not worry, right? But I want everyone to get, this framework that I keep showing you guys about, the B12 framework, and we're going to go into it in more detail, but I've touched upon it previously in kind of at a high level. But what I really want to formulate with everyone today is transformation in the context of making sure all of this stuff works together, right? And that's the important part. A transformation is only successful if the outcomes that you've kind of designed for your business are met. In many instances, hundreds of millions, if not billions of riyals can be spent on a transformation, but the actual outcomes that you've designed for yourself may never come to fruition. And in fact, you'll probably hear this a lot, right? But, transformations take many years, hundreds of thousands of hours, millions of dollars, etc. But the outcome is never realized because, as the brother mentioned, something like may not be there. You may not have the right people. You may have picked the wrong IT system, right? You may have done it at the wrong time, right? In fact, if you look, for example, now, what is the biggest digital transformation kind of impetus happening now? It's AI, right? Everyone is talking about AI. What is AI going to do? What is AI going to do, right? And the reason I wanted to talk about AI just briefly, because AI is a technology that will, in theory, transform every single business in the world, in theory. And the reason why many businesses are hesitant today to implement or transform their entire business in light of AI is not because of the technology, it's because of the timing. And I want to make this point, and I actually made a video about this on TikTok, right? So when you look at any kind of technology, right? Technology is something which is evolving, right? Technology evolves very, very fast. And technology always has a life cycle. So the life cycle is, someone introduces the technology and it's like basic, and then it quickly evolves, and eventually, it has a life cycle. And then someone else comes in with something smart, and so on and so forth. Now, this process normally would take years, tens of years, if not maybe even longer. And this is what happens. But what's happening with AI is, in terms of AI's life cycle, we are probably here right at the beginning, right? And people say things like agentic AI and all this stuff, right? And I'm sure it's even more crazier than, the stuff that we're looking at. But the issue is, if you implement AI today in your organization, this is where you will be. And then within 5 years, it's going to be here. Within 10 years, it will be here. You know what I'm saying? So timing is very important, because a transformation of this sort could be hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Which is basically why we're replacing 20% of our workforce. We're replacing 6% of our total IT system. So getting the timing right is imperative. And I feel that a lot of organizations are just not willing to pull the trigger yet because they don't know how far. You know, when a technology gets to a certain level of maturity, right? So if, for example, we were here with AI, and this is the gamble of AI, right? Is that if we were here with the whole, this is where we were today, then it might be okay. You know, look, it's gotten to this point where it's a less of a risk. But if we implement $100 million IT transformation and within 6 months it's already redundant, timing is very, very important, right? So hopefully, anyway, again, let's see if that makes sense. But everyone's cool so far. Everyone's comfortable.
Yep.
Perfect. Let's go.
I just have some a couple of ideas to share with all of you.
Please.
I think this particular case is actually quite interesting because I do work with a lot of retail, and I work with a large retailer here in the Nordics. And what we see actually, the share coming online versus offline is fairly the same. Okay. But this is only the case if you already have a large brick and mortar business. So if you already have a large brick and mortar business, to really take off, to supersede the offline sales, it's difficult. But what's interesting though, even though the brick and mortar business is already large, we still see that the online share keeps increasing. This is very fascinating. But
so it's not cannibalizing. It's just, so it's not a case of looking at it like this.
But here's the thing though. The problem with online shares, with the online sales, is that it's less profitable than offline sales. And the reasons are two. Number one, when you are in the shop, the salespeople are able to cross-sell you, upsell you, give you, you're able to buy even more than what you do online. And the thing is, when you're online, you're able already to, there are so many services out there that can compare the prices. So the margins online are lower because you buy less and you buy products that are the cheapest, the same.
Yeah.
And from another perspective, so this is from a pure financial perspective. From a strategic perspective, we also work with a large retailer in the clothing business. The thing is, if you're going to go global, is that there are a couple of things that are really important to customers. Number one is the pricing, and secondly is the how do you say, the diversity of items, clothing items, etc. The thing is that what we see is that from a strategic point of view, the large companies, like Temu and Shein, they're already going to dominate this space.
Yeah.
So it's going to be increasingly important for a retailer online to figure out if we're going to go global and be a global brand, how do you compete against that?
Yeah.
Because those two factors are going to be taken by these Chinese retailers for sure, and they already do. And it's very, very fascinating that I mean, the marketing of these guys and the reach they have all the way here to Nordics, it's crazy. I mean, they are buying the marketing placements as it's crazy. The budgeting, the marketing is off the case. So there are certainly, Shein and Temu are here to win, definitely. So I think from a strategic point of view, it's going to be really, really difficult for others to compete, at least on price and diversity of products.
That's an excellent insight here for and remember what this case study is. Thank you, bro. I really appreciate that. That's really, really insightful. Because remember the case here, right? The organization is a brick and mortar physical location first business. So the question is not for the sake of making sales online for the sake of making sales online. And I think the first point the bro mentioned is, number one, online doesn't cannibalize physical per se. It almost gives an alternative option, right? That's number one. But I think the point is, why are we going online? What is the purpose? Are we going online potentially to just increase our sales by way of volume of sales online, or are we going to go online more strategically? Because potentially, right, there's options there, right? So the why we are going online is very important, and I think the point he made about Temu and Shein, like I don't honestly, when I look at the Temu app, I'm confused. There's so much information coming so fast, it scares me, and it's crazy. Like the user experience of Temu, for example, right, is very Chinese in the sense that it's a lot of information coming very, very fast. Whereas UX in the kind of West historically has been, slick and focused and clean, etc. And it's not about overwhelming people with content. But clearly, we've missed the trick here, right? Maybe from a UX perspective, it's easier to digest, but I think people's appreciation and kind of maybe it's even down to just people's genuine ability to stay focused. You've got to bombard them just to keep their attention, right? So rather than keep people's attention with understanding, you keep their attention with overload. That's a very unique way of looking. I don't know if that made sense to you guys, but in my head, that made perfect sense. So like, even when I create videos on TikTok, it's either people's attention will be kept by the things that I say versus the things that they see. I promise you, man, this is a crazy dynamic, because I could say, for example, I could say something really interesting and insightful and it will get 0 views, right? But if they see me in a nice place, it doesn't matter what I say. Does that make sense? Say versus see is a very, very interesting. I mean, I've gone off the point, but I think the point the bro made, mashallah, is a great point. And let's see if we can get through that discussion as well. But say versus see, I'm gonna have to make a video about this because that actually is pretty smart. Anyway, that's how I come up with ideas for TikTok, man. But anyway, let's keep it moving. So
somebody raised their hand.
Oh, sorry, please. I can't see when you raise your hand, so just jump in at any time. So jump in, man. What would you like to say?
So it's somebody who raised their hand. I actually had something to say. Maybe that's what I was.
Oh, Fadal, please.
Bro, no one's raised their hand at the moment. I think it was an accident from them.
Okay, no worries. Yalla, bismillah, let's go. So inherently, this is our role as the advisor or the CEO support, whatever we are, whoever we are, is to find that balance between the strategy, right? And what did we say the strategy was? The why, right? The strategy is the why, or rather, actually, it wasn't the why, it was the what, right? It's the what. The business model is the why, and the operating model is the how. And our job is to find this alignment, right? So the what we're doing is kind of clear. We are going to go online. We're taking this business online. And the why we're doing it is obviously to figure out if we can make more money, protect our position strategically, and so on and so forth. And the how we're going to do it will be a function of the operations we need to make that happen. Now, I don't want people to get stuck up on what, why, how, right? I don't. Because in essence, or rather in kind of videos more recently, I refer to strategy as a function of direction, the business model as the engine, and the operating model as the chassis. And the idea is to get us, as I always mention, from point A to point B. That's the objective that we're trying to fulfill as part of our transformation. So this is the actual transformation itself, right? So rather than what, why, how, I want us to think of it from a direction, engine, and chassis perspective. And when we're effectively designing where we, in terms of getting to point B, right? First, we need to define the destination, like where are we trying to get to, right? As part of defining that destination, we need to define the route that we're going to take, right? The route, right? So the route is like this, right? That's the route. And also we need to define the mechanism of getting there, the vehicle as such that's going to take us there. Are we going to go in a car? Are we going to go on a bicycle, right? Are we going to go on a boat, for example, as well, right? So these are the three things as part of strategy we're trying to define: is the destination, is the route, and of course the mechanism, the vehicle that's going to take us there. All these three things have to be aligned, and that's how I like to look at strategy as such, right? Oh, sorry, this whole kind of whatever we want to call this, kind of this transformation process as such, right? So let's just quickly recap in terms of what is included here. So again, the reason I want to do sessions more like this, more intuitive sessions, is because I don't want it to be where we just do case studies for the sake of it. I want everyone's brain to be thinking and engaged. So as a part of which there is the vision statement, the mission statement, the objectives, and of course we want to have some initiatives, right? And then we will have our product, price, place, promotion, and the balance of that needs to be our people, process, technology, and our governance, right? So this is what we're trying to do. And right in the middle of that, to monitor all of this, we will have KPIs, right? So KPIs are usually linked to your initiatives, but KPIs, there will be KPIs at this level, KPIs at that level, and of course KPIs at that level. But the point for us as the advisor to the executive team is to help the management of our team get to a point where all of this is aligned and we can monitor progress as part of our transformation. And the last analogy I will give here is that Rubik's Cube that we're always talking about, right? Just remember here, right? So guys, of these three things, so this is 1, 2, and 3, right? One thing, this is all what we're only looking at for the time being is internal, right? This is just internal. This is what we can do in order to react to what's happening externally, right? So all of the impetus for this is coming from, oh, customers are saying, why can't we buy things online? We've got huge amounts of challenge coming in from these Chinese apps and so on and so forth, right? So again, we need to be conscious that what I'm talking about here is internal. So the 3 sides of the Rubik's Cube that you can see is the internal side, but there are 3 sides of our Rubik's Cube that we cannot see, which would be the external. But we, as part of, coloring in our Rubik's Cube, need to be conscious of the fact that it's not just a case of what we want to do internally. We have to be conscious of that whatever configuration that we're doing at this level, right? This is my configuration arrows, as you know. Right? Whatever configurations we're doing with any of this has to be considerate of internal plus external, right? So external would be market, would be regulations, would be enablers, would be what our customers want, etc., etc. But when we're talking about transformation, the external stuff is what's going to be driving this initial transformation, which is internal transformation as such. So let's keep it moving. Now, what do we think here is the scope of work? What would be our scope of work if we're going to, again, redesign this particular organization? So I think we need to start off with having a very clear strategy, right? We need to have a strategy for this, which is our vision, mission, objectives, initiatives. We need to have a business model, at least an assessment of our business model, and see how it could change. And I think what the bro mentioned, again, is, do we want to become a retail business with a e-commerce arm, or do we want to become an e-commerce business with a physical retail arm, right? So we need to make those discussions around that. And I suspect for a business that's making that much revenue with physical, it's not like they can say, okay, tomorrow we're no longer going to be a physical retailer, right? We have to play with our strengths naturally, right? And of course, we need to look at our operating model. And within our operating model, so this kind of alignment between these three things, as we've said, right? This will happen back and forward. But in order for this to happen, then what we need to put in place is our roadmap, right? How are we going to actually make all of this come together? And that will be a function of investments. That'll be a function of resource. And of course, that will be a function of time as well. Right? So we're going to have to see if we can make all of this come together. Is everyone following the logic so far? And I don't want to go too deep into the scope of work because I don't want us to be limited by what is and what isn't in and what is in the scope and outside of the scope. I want us to think of this like, because think of it, right? When you're working as a consultant, you usually have something called a scope of work. The scope of work is basically the limits on the kind of work that you're supposed to do. Now, management don't think in terms of limits. They think in terms of whatever it takes, we're going to do it as long as it's good for the business. So inherently, there's a challenge there. But it's nice to have some kind of documented, okay, well, this is where we think things are going to work. But I think we need to think about our strategy. We need to think about our business model, and we need to think about our operating model. Now, based on what we've discussed so far, does anyone have any thoughts on what initially the strategy would be? Like just some initial thinking. So if the strategy is the vision, mission, objectives, initiatives, let's think of this here as a hypothesis, right? So from a strategy, what would be the hypothesis from the strategy perspective? What do we expect to happen? I suspect, for example, from a strategic perspective, we will remain physical retail first company with a growing retail, online retail, right? Okay. So that for me, strategically, I don't think we're going to just let go of our physical retail and go 100% deep into this. I think we need to build something which is fit for purpose. And what would be fit for purpose in this instance would be initially, let's test the water with where we position ourselves from a retail perspective. So it could be just replicating. I think that would be a good starting point, which is we have historically been just a pure retail business. Sorry, a physical retail business. Let's just replicate what we have physically online. Let's try to recreate the experience of what we can deliver as a product and as a retail experience to our customers from physical to online. Like that for me would be a good starting point. In order to do that, there should be minimal disruption to our business model.
Just another quick point, Fahad, on this one.
Please.
I think given given the business already have a well-established brick and mortar business, I honestly don't think it makes sense to get rid of the big brick and mortar business because of two reasons. Number one, many of the core segments are already buying offline, so why should they? Yeah. So it doesn't make sense to do that. But secondly, I think this is an even important thing. What we see in retail is that when customers want to have something fast, they buy it offline. And I think the big use case here is the big strategic question that needs to answer it. Yeah, what is really the purpose, right? Is it more because in certain businesses, like for instance in home construction, many people use the online, the website, the online marketing, pretty much like a catalog to buy it offline.
Yeah.
While others pretty much just use it as a marketing gimmick because if you're not online, you not be part of the consideration phase at all. So I think it's a really, really interesting case.
Amazing. I mean, and again, great insight, right? Which is, okay, my initial non-retail expertise, right, would be, okay, well, listen, we need to, and again, these are the types of things that I would, and I promise you, alhamdulillah, one of the nicest things about my job is obviously I get to spend time with you guys. but I also spend time with many CEOs from businesses. I have no idea about the sector or anything, but because I've done it enough, I can just kind of hit the ground running quite quickly, in the sense that if a business is making that much money doing something, it's obviously doing it well, right? An 8% net margin on a retail business, my gut instinct tells me that they're doing something well. Accordingly, if they're doing that well, it just doesn't make sense for them to completely give up on that. Like no one would accept that. But I think, so my initial hypothesis would be that what we need to do is create or replicate, in essence, what they are able to deliver through their physical stores, virtually through their online stores. But exactly as the bro mentioned, it needs to be considerate of the fact that people who want things faster will do it online. And what we're not trying to do is cannibalize our core business. We have to understand that there is still demand, which is untapped demand, that we should be focusing on. So for a hypothesis, that for me is a great place to start, which again for me means minimal disruption to the business model, right? So the people, sorry, to the products, the price, to the promotion, and of course to the product, price, place, and the place, right? Well, of course the place will now be online, and I think we could possibly do a little bit of promotion online, which would be different, right? So promotion in the sense of marketing, but also in the sense of, you know, bundling and so on and so forth. And maybe there is a discussion point to be had on product and price. Maybe you have some exclusive offers online and so on, right? So there is a level of change here, but I suspect that the biggest part of the change will happen here, right? Which is, again, the people. You need a bunch of new people. You'll need to figure out some brand new processes, right? You'll need to figure out some key technology upgrades that you'll have to embark upon. And of course, governance, right? Think of it like this, guys. If it might sound simple to just plug a website onto a retail business and bismillah, everything will be fine. But in essence, what you're doing, right, is this is your current business today. You're having to rebuild your entire business like a shadow to that business, a virtual shadow to that business. So the people who you have to, okay, and let's think of it logically, right? You can't, so this is physical, and this is online. Think about it, right? The people you have here will not all, even if they were competent enough from a skill perspective, you don't have enough people. The processes that exist at this level will not be suitable for the processes here. The technology that you have here will not be suitable for the technology here. So you're really having to build a pretty big business. And of course, even the governance, right? You're having to rebuild an entire business. This is it's not as easy as just going to Shopify and building a website and bismillah, everything will be fine. This is a pretty significant undertaking.
Just to add another point on this one, Fad, you know, this it's actually very, very interesting what you just mentioned, because what we see is that from an operational standpoint, having an online business is actually completely different than having a physical business. And if you are going to be able to manage the sheer amount of online demand, you gotta have the processes way more tighter, actually. And you need to have a completely different tech stack online than you're going to have offline. And I give you a very simple example, a very, very simple example that is so astonishing that how many retailers don't have this on point. Well, one of the fundamental piece of technologies or piece of information that an online business needs to have is a so-called feed. A feed is really much like it's a dynamic product catalog. With all the different tags, you know, the amount, the pricing, the colors, everything. It can be as simple as an Excel sheet. But the problem is this has to be continuously updated and taken care of. But it's so astonishing that so many retailers don't have this piece of document, piece of database handled correctly. It creates so many problems along the line. It's crazy.
It's a very interesting point, right? You can imagine. I mean, even if you were to look at it from a, and I'm speculating here, but it's an educated speculation, or it's a guesstimate, but irrespective. But physical would definitely be slower in terms of being able to sell the right product at the right place at the right time. Right, it would naturally be a slower thing, right? You're competing against other people who have that, but online, especially against Temu and the likes of these feed things, will make that process significantly faster. So again, building a website is not just a case of setting up a website to replicate what you have. It has to entail a completely different organization, right? And that's going to be very important. And that organization will need its own technology stack, its own core processes, and its own core people. Even if the products are by and large the same, right? Let's just say 80% of the products that you sell, maybe even more, will be the same. And maybe you can even increase some of the products that you sell online because you have warehousing and stuff like that. But inherently, we're talking about a significant transformation here for this particular business.
And I can actually confirm your hypothesis, Fahad, because generally speaking, what we see is that the offline footfall is generally speaking way less than the online traffic. But then again, the average order value offline is way higher than the average value online, average order value online.
Interesting. So volume online,
margins offline, yes.
Yeah.
And this is what we see, right? So there's a huge increasing volume coming online, but the average order value per conversion is lower, and the margins are lower. But offline, there are less people, naturally speaking, less customers coming in, and then again you have a certain amount of salespeople which have to cater to each one of them, and they're able to upsell, cross-sell, and provide them, pretty much more expensive products than they would have otherwise bought. So the margins offline are still way better than online. And what's interesting also, another piece of insight is that a large established brick and mortar retailer have already a lot of good deals in place when it comes to rent, supplies, all that stuff, which makes it. This is why it's actually more usual for an online first retailer to establish themselves physically than for a brick and mortar first retailer to get rid of their brick and mortar business after they have gone online. Does that make sense?
Say that bit again. So it's more difficult.
Yeah, because if you really think about it, if you want to establish yourself as a brick and mortar business, it's actually the barriers of entry are higher than being an online first business. Because in theory, the only thing you need to become an online retailer is pretty much on a website for marketing, and you have to have the overview of the stocks, right?
Yeah.
But when you go offline, you have to you need to think about the physical location, the rent, all that stuff, which makes the barriers of entry higher than online. So what is usual is that it's very easy for an online retailer to establish themselves first online, then go offline. And it's very unusual for a retailer that has a large physical presence to get rid of their physical locations when they're going online, because they already have, if you really think about it, they already have a well-optimized business offline because they have so much experience in doing that. But what might happen is that they might get rid of certain locations every now and then. And which is not.
So that's like a portfolio optimization. But I like this little table that we have here now, right? So in essence, what we're saying is that online, the volumes are lower. Sorry, I got it the wrong way around. Online, the volume is higher, right? But the margins are lower, right?
Yeah, and another point just to add, and I think this is really, really important, because even though the volume is higher or is increasing online, it doesn't necessarily always mean that the total revenue online is as large or larger than total revenues offline.
Yeah. That makes sense, I think. So if we look here, the volumes online, that says online, so the volumes are higher but the margins are lower, but so then this goes the other way, so the barriers to entry are quite low, whereas the barrier to entry for offline physical is volumes are low, margins are higher, but the barrier to entry is also higher. So I think based on what the bro is saying, mashallah, is that we're saying that this part of the business, going from an offline business to online, right, is difficult, whereas going from online to offline is a easier journey as such. Everyone following this logic? There's a lot going on here, and I'm super glad we've done this because clearly there's a lot of interesting insight. So appreciate that. So let's keep it moving. So I now want to start thinking about this whole discussion, right? So we are now working with the CEO of this organization, and our job is fundamentally to understand some key inputs before we can, go back and say, okay, this is what I think you should do, right? So if that's the case, what we need to be thinking about is we need to do an internal assessment, an external assessment, and speak to some of the stakeholders. Based upon that, we're going to come up with a new strategy, a new business plan, a new operating model, and maybe a new performance infrastructure. Fundamentally come out with a roadmap. Now, we're probably not going to get a chance to go into this level of detail, but where I want to focus our attention is, from a transformation perspective. From a transformation perspective, I want to focus our attention all here, right? Which is what type of organization do we need to build accordingly? So if everyone's cool with that, let's keep it moving. So I'm now going to open up ChatGPT, and all of the discussion that we've had so far, I'm going to try and reflect that so that we can start building up our strategy, business model, operating model, and then discussion, and then turn it into some kind of strategy house, right? So let me just flip my laptop around. Move it. Give it a second. My laptop is just starting. So let's talk about strategy now. So let's keep everything that we've discussed so far. One minute, guys. There we go. So now I want to go to my favorite website, which is ChatGPT. So let's go here. So I've got here the entire case study, right? In fact, this is all it is. Right, so Control C, new chat. So based on this new chat, this is the case study that we have. So all I've done is copy and pasted everything that we've discussed so far. What do you understand so far? Company context, Motor Mart, yeah, retailer founded in 2008, 50 stores, yeah, business model, women's mix, brick and mortar, no online presence. So in essence, what we're saying today, guys, is we need to design a vision, mission, objectives, and initiatives based upon which we are going to, so the strategy, as we said, right? I'm gonna actually draw this out. So we have a vision, have a mission, we have an objective, and we have a initiatives, right? So and I want to show you guys how this Like, this is legitimately how we do this in consulting, right? And this is why I truly think that consulting has to evolve, because it can't stay the same in light of the ability for us to be able to do this live. And I'm not saying it's 100% accurate, but it's at least 50% accurate. And we can do 50% accurate in a matter of hours rather than 80% or 90% accurate in the matter of weeks, right? In fact, that's a good discussion to have. What do you guys think would be more useful, to do something which is accurate by 40% more accurate over a matter of months, or in an hour or two you can get 50% accuracy? Where do you think, where would you sit on that one?
I believe 50% accurate in 1 hour or 2 hours, much better, because you can enhance it, try it many times. Before you reach the month, you will reach like 90-80%, and you will have also experience of this works or doesn't work.
I agree, man. I just can't. I just don't understand how consulting is going to stay the same. It can't, man. Like, I've been there with clients, right? I've sat there with clients and I've said, guys, let's work it out together on ChatGPT, and it's much more engaging. You know, the process of consulting, the way it works is now is, thank you for setting us this exercise. We will now go do our back and present to you our homework. Whereas I've now sat in the meetings with our client and I've done it live with them on ChatGPT. It's much more engaging, much more, everyone's getting involved. It's much more, people are thinking, you know what I'm saying, rather than sitting there waiting, So I suspect that consulting is going to, I don't suspect, I know, because ultimately consulting is a service or a product like any other. It has to be driven by your customer. And if your customer is telling you categorically, this is how I prefer it, then unfortunately that's just the direction of, you can go against the grain, but going against the grain will only last so long. But anyway, I want to talk about the strategy here now. So what we want to do is, okay, this is great. Now we want to design a vision statement for this transformation project. What do you understand so far? Right. Let's see what it comes up with. And what we're going to do is refine it as we're doing it. So the purpose of the vision, it's not the company's overall corporate vision, right? That's already exists and it's profitable. The guided statement is for the project itself, right? So the inputs here for that, and this is very interesting, right? Because you can have a strategy just for your transformation project, because it is so large. In fact, we're working with many government entities in Saudi which have a huge transformation mandate, and within their own strategy, they will have a transformation strategy as well, right? And I suspect most people who are doing these types of things are dealing with this as well. So let's keep it moving, right? So yes, we're going to have a business trigger, which is slowing growth, competition from e-retailers, tone and direction. Okay. So now before and this is where I want to include some of the information that the bro mentioned. Bro, what was your name? Sorry, man, I keep calling you the bro. The bro, the Nordic bro. Is it? Sorry, bro, your voice cut out at the worst time.
Ahmed, my name is Ahmed.
Ahmed, okay, thank you, Ahmed, bro. I want to include some of the, so ChatGPT's understood exactly what I wanted it to do, which is create a vision statement for Modamart at a transformation level, not at the entire business, right? So before we design a vision statement, I want to include some key considerations. So number one, we said we expect that retail offline will continue to dominate, right? We expect that online, did I just delete everything? Online retail will be higher in volumes but lower in margins. We also said that, let's go back to our notes and see what else did we say. What did we say here? So it's high on those volume margins. Initially, we want to extend the current product offering online with minimal disruption, while disruption. Oh, did I press? No. While acknowledging that a complete new operating model is required to make this happen. Let's be straight, to bring the what's it called, the e-commerce business to life. So my favorite prompt: what do you understand? And I promise you, when I was doing this I was with a client, I was in their office. When was it? I think it was last Tuesday. And I was doing it with the CEO of this business. And he said, Fahad, I'm never going to use a consultant again. I want to go through stuff like this and just work through it, structurally. Anyway, so key consideration: Motor Start will not be abandoning physical. That's great. Stores will generate the majority of sales and margins in the near to medium term. Transformation is about complementing, not replacing. Excellent. E-commerce online will grow faster and eventually take a bigger share of the total sales volume. However, online sales will likely run at lower margins due to logistics, returns, digital marketing. This is amazing insights, right? So online is a growth and customer acquisition play, but not necessarily the margin driver, at least in the short run. You see what I'm saying? This bloody thing's smart as hell, man. Phase 1, extend the current product range online, minimal disruption, quick wins, proof of concept. Number 2, build a dedicated operating model, supply chain, warehousing, fulfillment. Look, you see what I'm saying? This would have taken, if you really wanted to kind of bust your brains around this, a couple of hours to even think of just that quickly, maybe even longer, to be brutally honest, a couple of days to get to that particular point. But this all makes sense, right? Our test there. Great. Can you design? Oops. My phone just fell down. Sorry, I left my stand at my mom's house, so I'm having to use books today. Okay, so can you design a vision statement capturing this? Okay, so omni-channel future, nice. To evolve Motormart and Saudi Arabia's leading omni-channel fashion brand, where physical stores remain our core and e-commerce extends our reach, offering customers seamless access to affordable fashion anytime, anywhere. Okay, which one do you guys think here? Because I promise you, when I do consulting projects, right, one of the things that probably I spend most time on, considering the volume of work, is vision statements. Because vision statements are like 20-30 words max, and they are so subjective, so down to people's interpretations. We end up spending weeks on getting it right. Sometimes we finish the project and we have to go back and change the vision. It makes no difference to the project, but people just feel more comfortable. To strengthen Motormart's retail leadership by combining, let's make it a little bit bigger, by combining the scale of our stores with speed of digital, creating an e-commerce business that grows volumes, deepens customer loyalty, and future-proofs our operations. Which one do you think is the good one here? Make Motormart the most accessible fashion choice for young Saudis, blending the experience. I know which one I prefer. Which one do you prefer? I just want to think about these first three. Which one do you think, guys? Oh, sorry, you guys can't even see that. My bad. Which of these two?
We are not the fast readers.
Hey, Malish.
For the location in it. I believe personally I prefer option 2,
Mhm.
but I think you prefer option 1.
Why do you think I prefer option 1?
Because it says physical stores remain our care, and e-customer extended and e-commerce will extend our reach. So I believe this because it says clearly that the mortar and brick and mortar will be our own core business.
And why do you think it should be number 2?
I prefer number 2 because it says and it talk about the scale and speed of digital e-commerce.
Yeah.
And loyalty for the customers, improve loyalty.
My honest opinion, number 2. You are wrong, brother. I agree with you.
Okay, great.
And
this is what I think.
I agree with you. And I was thinking, I wanted to understand why you thought I would. You know what I'm saying? I just thinking, why does he think I would think that? But alhamdulillah, I agree, right? So this is about strengthening our retail leadership, right? So this isn't about us becoming a e-commerce business or something like that. This is about strengthening our retail, business. This is about strengthening our overall, right? And that's something that and a big part of the decision to go into e-commerce aggressively, 50 million riyals is the investment they were talking about. A big part of that would, of course, be making sure that we are not rushing into it, right? And making sure that there is a core focus that this is complementary, at least initially. And that's why I liked it, right? I liked it because of that kind of initial kind of, strengthening who we are as a business. Great. We will proceed with number 2. Accordingly, can you design a mission statement? Right? Please give 2 options of that. See what it comes back with. So, execution focused. Our mission is to deliver affordable, trend-driven, integrating strong store network with a new e-commerce. We will invest in supply chain, digital marketing, customer experience to grow wallet. Okay. All right. Where are we going with this one? I'm going to be honest. I don't really like either, but we have to go with one just to keep it moving, because really this is about going to next step. So if we were to, are we going about execution focused, or are we going through customer centricity?
Customer centricity, I believe.
Our mission is to give. Okay, in this instance, I disagree. I think we need to initially focus on execution and being able to build something that, like I said, fundamentally replicates what we've already built. And I'm just arguing for the sake of arguing here, right? I want the mission statement. I'm just going to talk to ChatGPT because this is how I do it when I'm not with you guys. Okay, great. I prefer the execution focused mission statement. However, I don't like what you've drafted here. Can you give me 2 more options for a mission statement, which is execution focused? So let's, got it. Okay, growth discipline, building, here we go. Our mission is to execute a seamless transition into omnichannel. This you see, this is the kind of stuff I like. So let's copy and paste this, go to our document. Sorry. Control C. And I promise you, I really do feel this is the future of consulting. It's going to be like this, working with your clients, documenting things they can adhere to, and we're going to come up with a strategy within, I don't know, a couple of hours, man, right? So Great. Now we need to, okay, let's just talk to him. Excellent. So we're going to go ahead with option 4, building for the future. Now we need to identify some very clear objectives for our business. I want these to be time-bound objectives, and I want these to be measurable objectives. Accordingly, we need to think about strategic objectives, financial objectives, operational objectives, and of course, ensuring kind of business continuity and regulatory objectives as well. What do you understand so far? Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, strategic objectives, financial objectives, operational. Okay, now I did something here when I was saying it. I was like, oh, I don't know why I said that, but okay. Just to clear this up, can we please move the continuity objectives into operational and just keep regulatory objectives independent? So it should be strategic, financial, operational, and regulatory. Right, execution. Can you place the objectives, KPIs, and timelines in a table format, please? Let's review them. So let's keep going. Control C, and then we'll review them here, right? So we can have here. Table layout, table design. Let's have a look. Let's see if you guys can see my screen, right? Let's see if these actually make sense. So achieve share in Saudi fashion e-commerce. I'm not too sure if this is, I don't know. Okay, fine. Establish Modemar as a recognized omni-brand channel. Launch seamless omni-channel customer. I'm not sure if I'm really happy with these objectives per se. I think we need to go more granular, right? So, although I think, I'm not too sure. Let's just color this in. Sorry, it's going to bug me if I don't. Financial grow online sales, contribution, maintain group net margin, deliver ROI on SAR. Here's a question for you, Ahmed. In light of your experience in retail, if you're increasing your volumes but decreasing your margins with online, surely that's diluting your overall net profit margin, surely. So setting up you're kind of setting up yourself to fail if you're trying to maintain a net profit margin. In many businesses, they end up doing that. They end up focusing so heavily on their margins because that's what investors want. They kind of lock themselves into a position. So the customer may want something, but you're not able to deliver because you're focused on this, which will not allow you to be flexible. What do you think, bro?
Yeah, this is an excellent point, because this is really at the core of all retail challenges. Because from a purely marketing perspective, what we see is that there is huge search demand for a lot of products which are not necessarily our margin boosters in a way. So that's number one. Number two, as you correctly pointed out, when we see that online sales are increasing, but the margins are reducing, it means that the net profits are also reducing. So
Exactly.
It is also a problem when it comes to retail. So generally in retail is a low margin business, generally speaking. So then if you go a layer deep then in the strategic mind frame, we really need to figure out, all right, what kind of e-com strategy do we really need to have in order to, number one, make sure the volumes are going up, but at the same time, we're not reducing our margins. And this is where, what kind of products do we need to have online that we need to really we need to map out what are the products that we can have that the customers want, and at the same time the products that we also have and that we have high margins on. Those are the products we need to push as much as possible. But then again, we also need to figure out there are certain products which are usually called I think they are called loss leaders, I think, in which they give us, they are the ones who the customers buy in order to buy something else and something more.
So here's a very interesting one, right? So I truly believe, like, and I said it, my first initial reaction when I saw these KPIs, or sorry, these objectives, I thought they were all wrong. And again, this is where you guys have got to be careful with ChatGPT. It will give you what is logical, but it may not give you what is kind of specific to the case at hand, right? So let's go back to ChatGPT here and be like, okay, well, oh, it gave us a bit more and I didn't copy them. All right, but anyway, I think we need to revisit these objectives. Now, from a strategic perspective, this isn't about achieving market share. This is about establishing a robust omni-channel presence first and foremost, right? And that omni-channel presence needs to be financially not restrained or restricted by maintaining a profit margin. It's about creating the platform upon which we can become a, you know, we can in the future maintain our net profit margin. So that's not something we should be monitoring, or at least that should be something that we're willing to sacrifice in the short term, as part of which I think we need to be a bit more grown up and resilient about that. And operationally, we need to effectively build this entire ecosystem, the e-commerce ecosystem. And we need to be considerate of, you know, that's people, process, technology, and of course, governance as well. Because in essence, what we're doing here is we're building a completely separate business, and we're selling products between the two, which may be similar in nature, but there will also be a massive new level of product we're going to sell, promotion strategies we're going to use, and also, of course, pricing and discounts, etc., to get people comfortable with that. And the objective ultimately is not to cannibalize the physical outlets with the online outlets, or online outlet rather. It is to complement each other. So let's please revisit our objectives in light of that. Let's see where we get with this. All right, guys, can I just one note? I use ChatGPT for absolutely everything now, right? Everything, right? But initially, when I start with my prompting, I try not to start with verbal prompts. I start with typed out prompts to be a bit more specific. But once it gets comfortable with context, then you can start talking nonsense to it and it kind of figures it out. So let's see where that is. You're welcome, Ed. Right, so let's say now strategically, we need to establish Motorbot as a robust, yep, there you go, fully integrated online offering loyalty program. Okay, I'm not sure why loyalty was like the first thing. Okay, maybe because strategic, distinct but complementary e-commerce arm, percentage of customers, yep, in short, e-commerce enhances, not cannibalizes physical stores, yep. Financial invest from platforms for platform creation, not immediate margin. Yeah, this is now, see, now this makes much more sense, right? Drive online scale to reach sustainable threshold, online sales. Yeah, this one. Go for it, bro. No net margin in target years. Yep, this makes more sense. Build a complete e-commerce ecosystem, operating model. Yep, that makes more sense. Stand up logistics warehousing. Last mile delivery. Yep, these are very, very important things. Develop governance. Right. Full compliance with Saudi e-commerce laws. Adhere to consumer protection standards. Strengthens data. Yeah, it's starting to make a bit more sense here. What do you guys think? I think so. I mean, compared to what it showed us previously, I think this makes, and it actually will tell us what the thing strategically now about omni-channel robustness, not market share. That makes sense, right? Everyone comfortable with what we've just said so far? That the whole market share discussion was especially when you've got against whom you're competing with, Temu and these guys, it would have been, and I think it goes back to the point that Ahmed made earlier. Those guys are here to win. So this isn't necessarily about competing with them on a who's going to be better, us or Temu. This is about finding our lane in what is a very competitive market, but we have brand, we have presence. And it could even be the case where our online retail options and online could actually drive more sales at our physical. That could be a strategy in itself, right? Which is it Primark? I think it's Primark that still doesn't sell stuff online.
Yeah, I think that's correct, actually.
Yeah.
It's one of the English retailers who don't have any online arm.
Maybe they do now, but I remember historically, right? They never had. Oh wait, maybe they don't. Maybe it's just click and collect. I don't know. I remember Primark never used to do the whole online thing, and it would make sense with what you were saying, bro. Like it would make sense in terms of what you were saying, in that people go to Primark and they buy shit that they don't need, right? I spend a lot of money in well, I don't personally, but you can imagine who does. Sultan, a huge amount of money in Primark, even when they don't need anything. Oh, gotta go spend it. And you see it as well when the Khalijis come to London. You know, they're wearing head to toe Dior, but in Primark, they'll be 500 pounds.
It was actually an interesting point because it's a very, I mean, if you really think about it, the low pricing clothing are generally speaking not something that lasts very long. And actually, if you really think about it, the other clothing items that are more expensive, not necessarily super expensive like in the premium range, but in the middle to high range, we see they actually last longer. So if you really think about it, the price per wear is actually lower for the mid to high level clothing items versus the low pricing items.
I love it, man. What you just said to me is how my brain works, which is into kind of the dynamics of, you know, utilization versus capacity. So in essence, what I just mentioned is fundamentally that although these items are cheaper, their utilization is significantly lesser. I bought a white t-shirt from Primark. It literally 2 washes and it's destroyed.
Exactly.
Like gone. So the actual money spent per usage is terrible. But you go back and you see that same white t-shirt and you need it again. So you end up buying 10 white t-shirts, which I guess would probably end up being more than if you bought one Carhartt t-shirt, which is £30, for example.
Exactly. And from a strategic point of view, this is one of the positions that are fairly available, because if you really think about it, Temu and Shein are very, very cheap, but then again, they is not really sustainable in the sense that, you know, it doesn't last long. So for many retailers, they can actually take this position in which they can price themselves a little bit higher. So the volume will be definitely lower, but the margin will increase. But then again, they're going to have a much better marketing and strategic position in the market, in the minds of the customers, than competing on the same stuff. And they will definitely lose against Temu and Shein on price and product range.
This stuff is so interesting. I mean, look, it just gives you, like, again, these are the types of things. And Ahmed, I don't know what I did for you to join the session this morning. Alhamdulillah, I don't know where this alignment came from, but I promise you, man, these are the kind of conversations that management and leaders want to have. They don't want to just talk about how much does it cost and how much we're selling it for. They're thinking about it, which is, how much outcome, how much output do people get from our products, right? And if it were the case whereby we're making more margins on our higher, we're making less revenue but higher margins on our, so that could fundamentally change our entire product range, our product strategy, right? We could completely change that in light of what we were just discussed. Did everyone catch that discussion? It's a very, very important discussion, very unique discussion as well. So let's do here next. I've just added this here next page because, right, so we now have here our, let's call these our objectives, right? And I want to show you what, so we've got here, so we've got our vision, we've got our mission, right? And the vision and mission is the first part of the strategy, which is effectively our kind of direction. Vision and mission is about direction. Objective initiatives is about execution, right? So we've got our objectives. I want to show you what an initiative looks like, right? So what we can take here is one of these objectives, and we can turn it into an initiative card. And this is one of the important things I want to show you. So I'm going to take this, because we're talking about business transformation, right? I want to talk less about financials. Okay, great. I want to create one initiative, create multiple initiatives based on this one objective. And I promise you guys, when we're talking about transformation, this is the essence of transformation. It's basically thinking about all the possible outcomes and then turning those outcomes into objectives, turning those objectives into initiatives, and then giving the initiatives to the people in the organization to go ahead and actually complete, but obviously empowering them to do so with budget and so on. Right?
Another point, Fahd, which I think is really interesting, and it really displays the, sometimes I really wonder how on earth does companies in the Nordics really make money? And I'm going to tell you why. Because in essence, the process that we are going through now is the process that every business should have in place. But when it comes to objectives, and this is so fascinating, the upper management in C-suite, for instance, for a particular company might not necessarily, they're not actually expecting to grow in the upcoming financial year. So if they're not expecting to grow, they need to make sure that the margins are higher than the year before. But because of the complexity and the sheer largeness of the company, you have other departments that are trying to grow their particular category in the market. It's fascinating how much this misalignment there are in large organizations. And this is actually not the case for only one particular company. This is actually the case in many companies, at least in the Nordics. And I'm sure in other parts of the world too. I mean, the sheer misalignment is in reality immense.
Honestly, man, you've touched on something which is so important. And I think in many instances, people misconstrue what you've just said as politics. This is just politics. It's not politics. In many instances, it's just different people trying to do the thing that they need to do to get the biggest bonus and achieve their targets. So in many instances, organizations are set targets which everyone is focused on doing. So like, for example, if you're head of a category, so what Ahmed is referring to is like, if you work in a retail business, you could be, the category you could be in charge of is women's fashion, right? Mm-hmm. So you're looking at women's fashion and you're saying, okay, well, women spend a lot of money online. We need to sell more and more of our product, right? And accordingly, the people in the category are there to try to sell as much volume as possible, but the team, the team who's responsible for managing the e-commerce platform and the marketing budget may not have that same objective. And what then that creates is a bit of tension, which is, listen, why are we not pushing this particular product? Why are we pushing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And that creates, for me, that creates a misalignment. But unfortunately, in many instances, what that is usually referred to as politics. And then it's like, oh, there's too much politics in this organization, I want to leave, yada, 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 right? It happens a lot. So I think it is genuinely fascinating how deep you can go. Now, normally with the Boost Analyst program, we wouldn't go this deep, but I'm really enjoying this because I'm learning as well. So I'm just facilitating learning here rather than, hey, everyone shut up and listen to me. Right? I'm genuinely enjoying this. I hope you guys are as well, because very fascinating stuff here.
Just one last, very last point to add before I actually have to leave. Another experience I actually have when it comes to internal politics. We're in the middle of a business transformation case where with a large retailer actually, in which they are centralizing pretty much all of their operations, and we are beginning with their marketing and promotion efforts. And what's really, really difficult is, really think about it. You have in the current organization, you have a layer that are supposed to centralize everything, and underneath that layer you have all the local markets, right? You have, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland. And what's fascinating, and this is so the 90% of the budget, 90% of the budget is already set centrally, and to provide a little bit of a leeway to the other colleagues who are working locally, they have like 10% of the budget they can do whatever they want with. But what's really fascinating is that a lot of the people working in this organization have been here for like 10-15 years. So it's so difficult to get everybody on board. It's very, very difficult. And some people are quitting, and other people are pretty much really making it hard to implement this change. Because if you really think about it, everything is becoming now centralized to save cost, better control, and pretty much get better deals in total. But everybody still want to be like a king in their own little castle.
One of the biggest reasons and failure points for organizations is not product market fit. Like a lot of emphasis and time and energy is put into product market fit, and obviously that's the core. But when you have an established business, which then goes on to fail, in many instances, its transformations are made basically impossible because of the people. So culture of an organization, going back to what was said right at the beginning, culture is the essence. You can build the world's best e-commerce platform, but if you don't have the world's best 3PL logistics systems, and it could be seamless user experience, and you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on marketing, but if your people, right, fundamentally, if you don't hire, let's talk about this, right? You're basically building an organization, right, on top of an existing, retail business. So in essence, you're going to have to train your existing people, but also you're going to have to hire new people. That's a point of contention in a lot of organizations. So I want to show you the logic here, right? So the logic would be, we've got a vision, we've got a mission, then we've got some objectives. We came up with the objectives, and then here are the objectives. And now from these objectives, I want to create, so we've got objectives, and then we deep dive into, so this is now an initiative, right? Initiatives, rather. I want to deep dive one level further into what an initiative card looks like. This is an initiative card, right? So let's delete that quickly. So I want to emphasize on this one initiative card now, and let's talk about this in a bit more detail. So this is much better now, and I'm much more happier with this. However, I want to emphasize to our management the importance of having the robust people initiatives, right? Specifically around the culture that we'll have to adopt in light of this massive change coming to our organization. So I want to create a very detailed training initiative card with accountability, with key KPIs, with key budgets, etc., designed. And I want to make sure that we have that documented. So please create the initiative card specifically for training our personnel accordingly. So let's see what it comes back with. And I want to show you how strategy comes to light. And then the last thing we will discuss today is then creating this exact thing for the IT side of things. So we've got here now, okay, turn this into a table, turn this into a table format. There we go. So the initiative name will be training and culture enablement. And I think this is what Ahmed was saying, right? So the objective is to equip employee with the skills, mindset, and culture required to successfully operate. Cultural shift, digital first, customer-centric mindset, cross-channel collaboration, technical skills, e-commerce, yada, 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 right? So key activities, develop training curriculum, partner with external providers, mandatory induction, digital literacy, on-the-job coaching and e-learning, measure adoption, right? So we've got 80% staff trained, 70% staff score, right? Customer service response, right? CHRO is responsible, head of e-commerce business unit, blah, 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 right? God dang, right? You see how, so I want to show you the flow of this, right? So let's just post this here so that we have the actual card here. And I want to show you the flow of this. And this is, I promise you, how every single strategy, and you guys may know this, but I do a lot of videos on TikTok about Vision 2030. Vision 2030 works in exactly the same basis. Vision, mission, objectives, initiatives. And it's the initiatives is what holds people accountable, right? So let me just make this all black. Then we can see it in a bit more detail. And then hopefully, inshallah, I'll give you an idea of what to expect. But again, like I said, hopefully, inshallah, you saw that I didn't let ChatGPT just tell me everything. I challenged it and we were able to refine it. And of course, having someone like Ahmed with us gave us a real insight into what this could genuinely be. So let's have a look here. Sorry, I just need to change the font, otherwise my brain will not let me rest. I don't think I have ADHD apart from in PowerPoint. In PowerPoint, I'm screwed, man. I can't help it, right? So I want to show you the logic here, right? So this is the next page. So as I said, right, as I was saying, this and this, the vision and the mission is about the direction, and the objective and the initiative is about execution. So if we go on that basis, right, let's keep it moving. So we have here now very clear objectives, which is strategic, financial, operational, and of course, regulatory. And of course, at an initiative level, we have the people, process. So what did I do? So let's go through again. So I said, create some objectives, but specifically, I want you to create a more detailed level of initiatives, right? Around the operating model. And within the operating model, I want to specifically create an initiative card. So normally what would happen is that you would have hundreds of initiative cards just like this. You will give them to multiple people. And as part of giving these to multiple people, they will then have a very clear understanding of what they need to achieve. So the once you've created these initiative cards and you've given them to everyone. Yes, baby. Downstairs, baby. Yeah, you want to come play with Baba? Hey, come here, boy. It's Peppa. Come on. Baba's working. Come on. Okay, good boy. So the idea is that in the entire organization, you would have lots and lots of people with different initiative cards. And these initiative cards, oh, it's so nice. Okay, sit down, boy.
Papa, close your eyes.
I'll close it. Wow, it's animals.
Papa, do you want to draw it with me?
Yeah, okay, sit down. Baba's working, okay?
Papa, tomorrow we do this?
Yes, baby. Okay, now sit down.
Okay, let me...
Okay, good boy. Sorry, guys. He wakes up at exactly the wrong time, but anyway, alhamdulillah. So So what I wanted to show you guys today is how we got from a vision statement to a mission statement to some objectives to some initiatives. So again, we've got our vision and mission. We followed that up with some objectives: strategic, financial, operational, regulatory. We turned that into initiatives for people, process, technology, and governance. And based on the based on the people component, which is a major risk for this, we created an initiative. Now we can do the same thing. So this is initiative, which is for people. And then we're going to create an initiative, which is for IT. So based upon the IT stuff, let's have a look. So they've got build scalable e-commerce platform, deploy So let's say build payment gateways, loyalty program. In fact, let's keep it simple. Someone in the organization needs to be responsible for this. So let's go here. Perfect. I would like you to do the same for this initiative. So again, what it's done now is it's created the initiative for the person who's going to build the e-commerce platform website and mobile app. So it's got here the initiative name, what's the objective, what's the scope, what are the key activities that need to be done, the website, when it needs to be live, the KPIs, who's accountable, of course, what they're thinking in terms of budget, timeline, risks and mitigations. So if we then copy and paste this, I don't think it's going to fit, but let's see. Let's see, because here. Sultan, what you doing, boy? What are you doing? I love you too, boy.
Papa, how can you make a mess?
You make a mess.
No, I need to clean it.
No, you are making a mess.
Okay, I'm
Sorry, guys, just got to do this formatting here. But the point is, these initiative cards are what is managed by PMO. PMO's job is to say, okay, this particular one's owned by the CHRO. Let's get an update from them. That's what PMO is supposed to be doing, right? PMO would look at this and say, okay, where's the website? How are we there yet? So as part of the transformation journey, obviously we've got to design our vision, mission, objectives, initiatives, but then this has to be reflected into the rest of the business, right? So we end up coming back here. So I hope today we went into a much more detail than what we normally do. And I want to continue going down this kind of full nerdy route. So let me know what you guys think, man. Do you prefer sessions like this, or should we go back to, I find this is much more, I mean, the other stuff is good. This is definitely more insightful. The other stuff is high level, but this is more insightful. What do you guys think?
I think it's great like this as well. Just if you could help us with maybe not giving us a heads up, but like for the next session, giving us like some sort of reading or homework so that we can keep up with the session's pace.
Absolutely, bro. That's exactly where I'm trying to get towards. But inshallah, you're going to see like the Boost Analyst program is going to become much more you guys. I'm going to put a lot of onus on you rather than me just coming and talking. It's going to be you guys have to do your homework. You have to do your reading. So that's where we're trying to get to with it, inshallah.
Also, Fahad, if you wouldn't mind, could you share the recording or the AI notes with us?
That happens. Osman does that immediately after the session. We let him sleep for a bit and then he does it. So don't worry about that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, my bros. Well, I hope that was useful, and I found it genuinely very exciting. Well, okay, maybe it's not exciting. It's not like watching football, but it's definitely very intellectually stimulating. So I appreciate everyone's time. Jazakallah khair, and I'll catch you guys in a bit.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Take care.